Hello, and welcome to the Pride Perspectives webinar series. Today is November 8th, 2022, and we will be talking tonight about the Institutes for Active Learning here at Trinity-Pawling. My name is Amy Foster. I've been at the school for a long time. That will suffice. I serve here in the Learning Commons, Director of the Learning Commons, and also in the world of admissions. I'm in that world as well. So I am joined tonight by Bill Taylor, our head of school. I'll just go through and give everybody's names, and then we'll be speaking to everybody individually. Mike Weber, who's a science teacher and the head of the Entrepreneurial Institute. Dr. David Hooks, who's in charge of the Leadership Institute. Josh Frost, who's their Environmental Institute leader, and Jay Kellogg, who's our Citizenship Institute leader. So without further ado, I will ask Bill to start off our evening by answering a very basic question. Just what are these institutes and how did they come about?
Well, thank you and good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking some of your valuable time to spend it with us, whether you're here live or watching it later. We appreciate your interest in Trinity-Pawling. The Institutes for Active Learning are essentially 4 different schools within a school. And there are 4 different dynamic learning opportunities for students to gain a deeper appreciation for something that is impactful to the world in which we are living today and the world that they will be leaders of in the future. And we devote time every week to making sure that we're providing some dynamic, creative, hopefully some degree of active and energetic exercise into an exploration into the themes of these 4 different areas where we have institutes. And those 4 areas are leadership, citizenship, environmental stewardship, and entrepreneurialism. And so we have 4 leaders of these institutes. We have seniors who have sort of self-selected. They've declared a concentration essentially in one of the 4 institutes, an institute where they have a particular interest. And we have faculty who have also essentially chosen an institute of preference. And the leaders who are here tonight, plus the faculty, plus the seniors, are responsible for creating innovative programs on Saturdays. Many boarding schools continue to teach classes on Saturday. That's sort of the model in which we were all founded. We have a half day of classes on Wednesday and a half day of classes on Saturday. We play our sports Wednesdays and Saturday afternoons. And several years ago, we decided at Trinity-Pawling that we could find something, a little bit more creative, more engaging for the boys to do on Saturday mornings rather than to be in class. And so we restructured our academic schedule. We essentially moved the time that we would be teaching coursework back into the 5-day week to allow for a block of time on Saturday mornings to do something a little bit more innovative. And once we made that switch, we were able to then work to develop some, this program in particular. And so we use the Saturday mornings to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into thematic aspects of leadership, environmental stewardship, entrepreneurialism, and citizenship.
Thank you. So why, if you can remember back that long, why did we stop at 4? What were the reasons 4 were chosen?
We've been doing something here called the practicum for about 7 years, and the practicum has various different graduation expectations involving experiential learning and project-based learning. And part of the practicum is for each senior to do an independent study. They can choose anything that they want to spend a concentrated period of time on. They work with a faculty member. It could be a vocational interest. It could be an avocational interest, just something that appeals to them. And after about 5 years of doing these senior projects, we did an inventory of, where are the common themes? Where are the boys choosing to spend this type of dedicated, individualized study time? And do they have anything in common? And once we began that inventory, it was pretty clear that we had a chunk of boys who were doing projects that were related to the environment. We had, boys who were doing projects that had some sort of civic aspect to it, some sort of service involvement, something engaging with larger communities. We had boys who were creating projects that wanted to further develop their own leadership. And then we had boys creating projects that were deeply creative and innovative and entrepreneurial, creating products and figuring out ways that they could market the products that they had created. And so that began sort of the development of these institutes, because we knew we had something with what the boys were demonstrating that they had an interest in. And it just so happens that those 4 areas are areas that are deeply relevant to the 21st century, and which is why they were choosing them, choosing to explore in those areas. So we followed their lead and really developed it around what they were telling us.
Great. Well, let's go to each of the institutes and hear a little bit more about what they do, what they are, what kind of activities they lead. I will start with you, Josh Frost, with the Environmental Institute. If you could tell us more.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, so each term, the Environmental Institute of last year and this year has offered pretty unique activities. This past fall, we offered 7 different options for students on Saturday morning, and it ranged from a fly fishing class to hiking the Appalachian Trail, some outdoor survival skills, learning how to make start a fire with friction. We looked at sort of Trinity-Pawling's recycling program and how we can improve that. We cooked with local food, some French dishes. Mr. Lacroix, the French teacher, led that group, and they made some tasty dishes with food actually from our own farm, which was great. We built bat houses. And lastly, we started construction on a tent platform. And that tent platform is located up on our property in a nice field with a view where we plan to put a tent and hope to camp out in the spring for our environmental stewardship weekend. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm helping a student in the library, getting him some keys, so multitasking. Mike Weber, why don't we move on, and then we can always circle back if we have more questions about the Environmental Institute. But Mike, tell us more about the entrepreneurial.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Amy. So just to set the scale of what we were doing during the fall is each institute, in fact, had 2 weekends where they were running events. We took a unique approach this fall, and we ran 2 separate events. So one event was designed specifically for 9th and 10th graders. And then the second event of the fall was designed for just the 11th grade class. The first event, so we had 80 plus 9th and 10th graders, and they were involved in a sort of a building challenge. The seniors had named this after a common game that the boys play called Clash of the Clans, if anybody knows that. So it was a building challenge, and they were broken up into 8 teams of 10. Each just had senior captains, and in short, they were asked to, or challenged to, build a structure as large as they could, as tall as they could, and it would be judged on that. its weight bearing ability, and as well its their use of money during the challenge. The money was used to buy additional materials. So they had to use money, but they also wanted to save money because that was part of the judgment. And so they had two phases. Well, one was a building phase, and then there was an attack phase, which was kind of fun for the 9th and 10th graders to attack each other's structures. Then there was an assessment and a rebuilding phase, and a final attack and judgment. So size, weight bearing, and as well as how did they use their money during the challenge. An interesting story happened in between the two events of the younger classmen, the 9th and 10th, and the 11th graders. I had gathered the seniors together on a specific meeting in between the two events. And I asked them, would they like to run this challenge again, the building challenge for the 11th graders? And unanimously, I had given them an option, which I'll talk to you about. Unanimously, they said no. They thought that the 11th graders should move on to higher aspirational challenges. So the 11th graders were involved in a design sprint or a design thinking workshop for the second morning. And there were two pieces to that. One was to solve a business parable. It's called the elevator problem. If you look it up, it was well known as a Google question. I think it was a Google interview question for some time, and well known among MBA programs now as and part of their design thinking. So that was the first one, and that was a sprint. So they had to solve this elevator problem, within 10 minutes. They had to come back. They had to have a prototype, which ended up being a picture of how they would solve this elevator problem. And then they went into the second phase, in which the teams were asked, and I should have said they were all broken into their own individual teams of 8. Again, the seniors were the leaders of these modules. In the second phase, they were asked to design an impact investment or a change that would improve the TP student experience or add value to the community. So they went through, in each of these cases, they went through multiple typical design thinking processes. There was voting on different aspects of their brainstorming. They had to explain, why, for instance, their impact investment would make a change and add value to the community. And then again, they had to pitch that back to the larger group. And so what ended up happening is we had 8 or so final design impact investments pictured out on a large paper for all the other teams to see.
Thanks, Mike. That's pretty cool. I realized I neglected at the beginning to ask if you have any questions. We do have some that were pre-submitted to us. However, if you have any other questions, one of the silver linings of the COVID pandemic was getting familiar with Zoom. So on the bottom, you have a Q&A feature, and we'll be looking at that throughout the webinar as well. So if anything comes up for any of our panelists or just in general, feel free to use the Q&A feature, and I'll be watching that. Okay, we're going to move on to Dr. David Hooks, who will tell us more about what the Leadership Institute has been up to.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everybody. This past fall, as Mike has said, we divided into 2 different weekends, and we dealt with the 11th grade class our first weekend, and then the 9th and 10th graders the second weekend. With the 11th graders, we did a game called Capture the Flag, which a lot of us over the years have played. We had the seniors formulate teams, and there were two teams, and the seniors were divided into 2 groups, and they took turns first leading the groups in the competition, and the other half of their group would act as officials for the game. So they had to make sure that when students were tagged, that they went back to the what was designated as the jail space. And then we had a halftime, so to speak, The two teams met with their respective seniors, and then the roles were changed so that the seniors, one group of seniors that were the officials are now the sort of team captains, if you will. The games went very well. They both lasted between 40 and 45 minutes. Capture the flag, if you're not familiar with it, we basically used the center quad of Trinity-Pawling's campus, extending up to the tennis courts and all the way down to just behind the theater. So it was quite a big course, and students could run in behind buildings and, you know, hide in bushes and things like that. So there was a strategy employed both groups. When the seniors met with their students the first round and second round, the strategies were adjusted in the second round. I think, and then the second weekend with the 9th and 10th graders, we actually changed the courses a little bit, made them a little smaller. It was in mostly just to make sure that we could keep them kind of reined in and make it a little safer. We were concerned a little bit about the youth of some of the younger kids. And so we had two groups operating in two different areas. The seniors' leadership roles were basically the same. I think the older boys, the 11th grade boys, weren't quite as energetic. So that took some real encouragement by the team captains, the senior team captains, and the younger students. It was almost quite the opposite. In some cases, they had to be pulled back in a little bit with their enthusiasm. But the games were good. It was a good athletic experience, or energetic experience, I guess, a better way to put it. And that they got they were outside for nearly the entire 2 hours and you know, running and hiding and just basically having a good time, while the seniors were involved in trying, I guess one way to describe it would be keep organized chaos organized. And their leadership was they understood a lot more about what it meant to lead in two capacities by the end. One was as a team captain, or team captains plural, and then the other was trying to keep the rules of the game in force. So it's a different approach from a leadership standpoint. The debriefs were important at the end, and that's really where I think our seniors started to really grasp why what they were learning from it. And I think sometimes the aspect of teaching, certainly been my case in my years as an educator and coach, that when you teach you learn a lot more about what the subject is. And the boys did a really good job with debriefing, and then we debriefed the seniors after all of the younger students have gone, and their discussions were quite interesting. And I think they began to get the idea of leadership, and going forward, we're going to break off into some different separate groups and let them try to apply those the things they learned this fall, this winter, and try to really apply those skills.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I know being part of the Leadership Institute, it was fun to see, for me, the difference in the 1 week versus the other, the older kids and the younger kids, very different energy level. But both beautiful Saturdays, and they had a wonderful time learning more about themselves outside, which is great. Okay, Jay, it is, we are on to the Citizenship Institute. If you would shed some light on that, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, and good evening to all. So our group this fall, we really try to break citizenship down into global citizenship, national citizenship, and local citizenship. And our focus this fall was on global citizenship and looking at some large issues that sort of plague the world. And we looked at a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that makes up citizenship. And citizenship's a really broad term, and it's a little bit hard for people to grasp what it really means, I think. And we try to get our students to really kind of hone in on specific things and realize that there are so many things out there that encompass being a good person, and really having an idea that there's a lot more than just them in the world. And what we do affects many, many people on many levels. And globally this fall, we have about 15 senior leaders that are with us, and we have about 14 adults that are with us in our group. And what we did was we sort of did some brainstorming. We had an adult pose an idea, and we had students sort of pose some ideas, and then either the student, the student run ideas paired with an adult leader, or vice versa. And we came up with a bunch of different activities that we could offer to our student population in small groups of about 10 students per group. We did our, I know some of the groups did things that were different for the freshmen and sophomores, and we actually thought about doing that with our juniors and seniors. But our group decided that we wanted to stay with the same activities. Our initial thought was that the younger guys would be good in some of the activities we did, and the older kids would think they were a little bit maybe boring and simplistic. And it really kind of worked out the opposite way, which is really interesting. I think the juniors in the groups that we had really dove in headfirst and really took full advantage of their time in these groups. So they were on the day. Each group, unfortunately, wasn't able to do every activity because we only have about 2 hours on those mornings. So each group did 4 different activities for about 25 minutes each that day. Some of the activities included, we had some that were inside, some that were outside, some that involved food. We had some Korean students who made some Korean barbecue and taught kids about the process of the making of the food, and then also about chopsticks and their history and how to use chopsticks. We had a diplomacy game down in the field house that involved a problem that could result in a peaceful solution or war. Not shockingly, most of our kids were ready for some war, and then they blasted each other with Nerf guns in a battle to the death. So they were running around and chasing each other, and but the message was clear that if you're not careful, war is pretty easy to get to, unfortunately. We did an exercise on migration. We have a pond on campus, and we took kids out by the pond, and the idea was to give kids an idea of where they were trying to move from in the world. They were going to have to cross a body of water. They did have to do that, or try to, in a boat that was taking on water. We had some people who didn't want them to migrate with Nerf guns that were trying to assassinate them as they got to the boat. They were given roles so that if they got to the boat and then they actually made it across the pond, which a few guys did, they were told what they would do next. And even if they made it across, they might not be able to stay where they had hoped to stay anyway, depending upon things like, are you a pregnant woman? Are you a male, an adult male? Are you an adult female? Are you a child? Which was an outstanding activity. We had an activity called Poverty Perspectives that was a computer simulation in which kids were given a specific amount of money in a budget, and they had to make decisions with respect to their lives and the money that they were going to spend on certain things, and living below the poverty line, and trying to stay afloat with things that just pop up in your life that you don't expect. We did an exercise in origami, led by a Japanese student and 2 of our faculty members, which was great. And really, our last one that we did was an exercise in kindness that refers to music and lyrics, and really kind of looking deeply at how things that we say and do can affect other people, and some contemporary music and some music that maybe some of us would have listened to, some Peter, Paul, and Mary, and just looking at music over the course of the years and how it really, a lot of it hasn't changed, but has deep messages if we actually listen to those things. Our kids were at these small groups. They were there for about 25 minutes. They did a little debrief on, and a lot of talking and discussion about what they were doing in each group, and then moved on with their group to their next block. We'll be moving into a national citizenship activity in the winter, and doing a model Congress exercise about national issues. And then in the spring, we'll be doing a larger scale community service project when we look at our local citizenship. It's sort of a day that we really focus on Trinity-Pawling in our local community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Bill, I think you were going to go into some of the debriefing about debriefing.
Well, many of you mentioned, the process of debriefing and that it's a component of this. And I'm just curious to hear from you about how that experience of getting the feedback informs sort of the iterative process of your own, of your institute's creativity. I mean, how, and some of you have alluded to it, that you thought you were going to get one answer from the kids and you got a different answer, and it made you sort of shift gears. And just how important is that debrief process to the growth of this overall program, do you think?
I could take the beginning piece of that. I think it's ultra important. And I think what we've found with our group, we have some really strong senior leaders in the group. And the vast majority of the discussion that we have is based on them leading the discussions and talking about things that we can do better, things that we should change, things that we should leave the same, things that work, group sizing, timing, all of those kinds of things that go into planning events like this. And I think that their input is invaluable. And I think that because they have a noticeable presence in whatever we're doing, they're much more invested and likely to really put themselves fully in, because the teaching piece of this was done primarily by the students and all of the activities. So, we're there and we're guiding, but we're really trying to just facilitate. We really don't want to do. Last year, I think in the beginning of this, I think we were kind of, because of the nature of the setup, we were sort of forced to do more as adults. And now the planning piece has evolved so that we have enough time with our kids to allow them to do the planning and not just be told this is what we're going to do and this is how it has to happen, because we just don't have enough time. We sort of reinvented the schedule that it allowed us to be able to do these things and then to be able to have time between sessions. So for example, if the citizenship group goes on the first weekend of November, we have time between the first weekend and the second weekend that we present to modify things, talk about things, change things, if those are things we need to do. Or we say, hey, we were on point, things were great. I think we hit it out of the park. Let's do it again. But the kids really lead most of that. And it's been really rewarding to see them change, at least for me, in the last 2 years.
I think I'll grab that next, if that's okay. I want to build on what Jay said. I think that we're trying to achieve the same thing. I think all four institutes are, where it's predominantly senior led. And our role is to stimulate their thoughtfulness about the projects and what we want to accomplish in them, so that they can come up with the ideas that actually roll out the programs and what we actually do in them. And then in the debrief session, the nice thing about the scheduling this year is that we have that weekend in between, so we can debrief with the kids. We can meet again in between while the other institutes are doing their thing, and actually talk about working kinks out. That's how we got to a different format for the 9th and 10th graders in our second session this fall. And it actually has led, the post discussion after week 2 has led us to some really good ideas about what we want to do in the winter session. And that now we've gone from last year, as Jay suggested, that last year it was kind of like, all right, well, this is what we're going to do, sort of top down from the faculty people, to where the seniors are now putting the ideas out there, formulating them and getting them into some sort of a concrete format so that we can actually deliver programming in January when we come back to school from the Christmas holiday.
The debrief with my seniors was a single event that led to I think that the proper fit for our younger boys, the 9th and 10th graders, right? They had their event and then we debriefed. We agreed together that they sort of determined this, that they wanted to move on with the older kids. Some of the older kids last year had done some of these building challenges So they wanted to really have the older kids have an opportunity to dig into some of the pieces that are part of a true entrepreneur. Like, we're hoping to head that this is going to be an evolution where the younger boys are setting the foundational skills, and that the older boys are putting it into action. So the design workshop for the older boys was a perfect evolution from, team building and strategy and communication to, okay, now we have a real problem. How do we fix it? And that's the way we see this moving through the years, that and the years ahead, actually, is that the younger guys will build the foundation and the older guys will put it into action, because they will already have had those skills with the foundational level.
And I would add to to the idea of a reflection time that, I mean, the other three have spoken about time with seniors and that sort of the iterative process of coming up with improving each time we present to the underclassmen. And I would also highlight the value of the time that we spend at the end of a Saturday program for the last 15-20 minutes with our students, and just saying, hey, connecting what we did as an activity with why it's important. Why did we just make bat houses? Why do we care about how efficient Trinity-Pawling is at recycling? Or why is it important to learn how to cook with local food? Why does it, the significance of all these things for us in the Environmental Institute is trying to connect the activity with what's happening in the world and what our boys are going to experience as they move forward. So that time, that reflection time that we build into the end of our program is really important for the younger guys, because otherwise, they may have fun building a bat house and got to use a screw gun and other tools that maybe they don't have too much experience with, and that is fun, but why? And so I would also highlight the value of that piece at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. The second half of that question is, what are the skills that we're trying to teach? And I mean, you're speaking of, the hands-on learning how to hammer, saw, and that kind of thing, but are there any other skills that we're looking to give them, to have them learn?
Yeah, I guess I would continue and say that for us in the Environmental Institute, we're trying to give the boys an appreciation for the outdoors through understanding of the outdoors, or at least through some exposure. I live in a dorm here at Trinity-Pawling, and I often am in contact with parents of boys who live with me. And I have never met a parent who was concerned that their son was getting too much outside time and really wasn't getting enough screen time. I mean, that conversation has never happened. It's obviously quite the opposite. And so it's easy for us in one sense to just say it's important for us to get boys outside to see how the natural world works. And hopefully, if by a bit of exploration and exposure and being on our outside on our beautiful campus with all the resources we have here and in the immediate vicinity of Trinity-Pawling, to sort of build some appreciation for the outdoors, and hopefully that will lead to a desire to care for it moving forward. I mean, we think pretty much it's hard to expect a young man to care about something he knows little about. So our first goal is exposure and trying to build appreciation and moving forward. So
That's great. Did anyone else have anything to add to the skills set? I see you're off mute, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to just sort of continuing on where I was heading with this evolution within the Entrepreneurship Institute, is that I think in the end, we're hopefully trying to have these boys learn skills from the foundational collaboration and teamwork and communication within our institute for critical thinking and problem solving and taking risks and innovation. Right, these are the challenges that they're going to face, the opportunities that they're going to face in college. They're going to be forced into these situations where they have to, solve difficult problems in the classroom, right, and in peer groups, and extracurricular activities. And without a doubt, they're going to have the same thing down the line in business. Whatever their adventure is later, the journey is later, there's always going to be an opportunity for how do we do this better? And that's the sort of questions that we're trying to approach with them this year. I'll add on that I think our next phase, which I haven't talked about, is that the older kids are probably going to head in that direction. Is, where are my interests? And is there an opportunity for growth, for a product, for an investment? And some of that might be virtual or simulated, but maybe it's real. Maybe they're designing an app by the end of the year, or maybe they're getting together with a team that does something with the local community, or maybe they're designing a food truck that brings new business to one of the games in the spring. I think there's just a lot of opportunity here that matches the type of things that are going to be wanted by schools and businesses down the line.
I think from a citizenship perspective, all the things that Mike and Josh already talked about are also relevant. But I think for us, we're like I did allude to earlier, I think that we're trying to give boys exposure to things that they just might not otherwise see in a textbook, or even on the internet, right? Things that are issues that they just have no understanding of, about water supply or food or poverty or racial issues, things that they just need to understand and have a better appreciation of, that we can't get in a traditional classroom setting or in a book or a something that we read about. We've got to be able to discuss it, look deeply at some of these things that are much like, I said before, they're bigger than us. And if we don't have any understanding of those things, we're really pretty ignorant. And we need to be able to help kids understand these issues that, as the guys said earlier, they're going to see and they're going to face and going to experience in all aspects of their life, whether that's in college or as adults or as parents, whatever those are. So the deeper we can go with some of these things, the better job we're doing trying to teach the teenagers who are here today.
I certainly agree with all of that. And I think a lot of it applies. I think a lot of what we do in all four of these institutes is interconnected with the others. And I think the obviously the way they came into being by the boys pursuing these things on their own initially before the institutes were set up indicates that as well. And when you look at skills, as far as the skills and leadership, I think one of the things that we have to unpack for them is they hear the term leader in many experiences that they have: leader on the athletic field, leader in the classroom, student leaders, prefects. All of these things contain leadership components, and many of them will experience those positions before they've really experienced, really studied leadership and thought about it. And I know my own interest. I mean, I've been leading as a coach and teacher and administrator for years, and as I took on this challenge and really delved into it over the summertime, there's a lot of facets to leadership that we don't typically think about, and even once we're involved in a leadership role. So that's where we're trying to go with ours. I think it's one of the things that you realize is that there's the charismatic person who can lead something, but then you have to contend with the followers, who are the people that you're trying to motivate and get them headed in the same direction, working coherently together. Then there's the impact of the environment. I mean, it's a funny story now. I'm glad it didn't turn into some kind of a disaster, but while we were running the first morning experience, Mr. Taylor had a group of, I think it was board members or alumni, who were walking around campus and looking at the beautiful buildings, and the campus is a beautiful day. And we've got kids running all over the place, and we're just crossing our fingers and saying a little prayer that nobody is going to get mowed over on the path while they were doing this. But I think that, so you have a number of different things that play into, can work for or against someone who's trying to lead. And that's where we want to take this experience. And I think that the idea of evolving it is something that will be really beneficial as these younger students, the freshmen, sophomores, grow into this. They make a decision to choose one of these four institutes and then actually apply themselves. Because I certainly saw that happen from last fall, when our juniors, who are now our senior leaders, took part in the 3 exercises that we did last year. And then in the spring, they chose which direction they wanted to go. And they were very enthusiastic. As we met with the rising seniors last spring before they adjourned for the summertime, it was very clear that the enthusiasm, not only for our leadership group, but I think for all 4 of the institutes, the seniors that were, the rising seniors that were into it, were really into it. And that has, I think, I'm speaking for all of us, don't mean to be doing that, but I think that's proven out in all 4 institutes, that this senior class has a really significant buy-in. And we feel like that energy can perpetuate itself going forward as well.
Yeah. I feel that we've pretty much answered our next question was why are the institutes worthy of the time that's devoted to them? I feel that we've really gone over that, just dealing with how well they've been going and how much each institute has given. So I think
I'd like to jump in there though, Amy, because
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of extrapolate what we're doing here to really explain why this is so relevant for young people in this 21st century. I mean, this is a rapidly changing world, and schools, by their very schools are conservative institutions. Schools don't change much. And if schools aren't changing or evolving, and the world is changing rapidly, that means that there's a widening disconnect with the skill sets that young people are developing in schools, and I would say also in colleges, and then what they will need when they're out in the real world. And what young people need to be able to navigate a rapidly changing world is the ability of how to engage something. And that involves taking healthy risks. That's involved getting out of your comfort zone. They need to learn the ability to solve a problem. And in order to solve a problem, they need to understand why something is a problem or what a problem even is. And those skills need to be taught. And then they need to learn how to iterate, so they can learn from how what worked, what didn't work well. And all of that leads to a greater sense of self-awareness, and which is absolutely critical in a rapidly changing world. Knowing who you are, what can you bring to the table, and all of that. And then I would add to that another piece, that we are a boys' school, and so we're going to lean into doing all of that, engaging, problem solving, iterating, and focusing on self-awareness by sort of leaning into how boys learn best. And they learn best by being active. They learn best by being, experiential. Boys really need to see the relevance of something that they're going to spend time on. And they want to be involved in something that's meaningful. And they also want to have choice. And so all of those factors of how we know that boys learn best are baked into all of this. That they can be active, that they're going to see relevance. They get to choose as seniors, the institutes. They're going to have 3 years of seeing relevance, and then have the ability to concentrate themselves. So when you think about how we're going to spend time as a school for 2 hours on a Saturday, it really was a no-brainer to say, let's use that time in a much more creative way than doing what we've done for the last 5 days. And let's shake it up a bit so we can teach these specific skills in a more effective way than we could in the classroom or through a book.
Absolutely. Well said. Does anyone have anything they want to add to that piece? We'll go on.
We can,
Yeah.
I just think, I know that one of our goals is to bring it into the classroom, and as a social studies teacher teaching econ and world history, there are lots of opportunities to bring in not only what we're trying to accomplish in our leadership institute, but all 3 of these. We've already gone over a section of entrepreneurship in econ. We talk about in history. We've talked about the civility factor and how oftentimes cultures tend to go to war first. I think Jay mentioned that with the kids, we're much more interested in popping each other with guns than to find a peaceful resolution. And certainly in both history and econ, the environmental state of our world right now demands that we talk about those things. So I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this, is because I can actually, there's kind of a back and forth between developing the institutes and then bringing stuff into the classroom that we do. So
That's great. And David, that's a perfect segue to our next question, which is what do these institutes do to help you grow as educators, and what excites you about them? What does it help you bring to your own personal growth as well as for the kids? Would like to take that.
Start on that one. I think, you get when you're a teacher and you work for, 2 or almost 3 decades doing things that are traditional by nature, when you're first tasked with these things, it can be daunting, even as an educator who's a lifetime educator. But when you do them, they reinvigorate you as an educator and make you think hard about things like Mr. Taylor said, about things that are changing in the world and things that are changing in education, and ways to get kids excited about learning. So it's an opportunity for us to take on new challenges and learn new skills as leaders or educators in our own fields, but to also see kids in different ways that we wouldn't traditionally see, if they're literally just sitting behind a desk. So, we, as human beings, I think we want to move too. We want to get up and go and expose ourselves to new experiences. And it allows us to do that too, because as an educator that's inside in a room for a large percentage of the week, it's nice to be able to do something different on a weekend and still be teaching, and especially teaching skills that are lifetime skills, right? Kids can find any information on the internet in seconds. They can't have the experiences that we're giving them without guidance and time to experience those things away from the instant gratification and knowledge that you can do when you hit the Google button. So it's a different experience, and it's very rewarding. And I think for us as educators as well as the students.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
I heard this from
Josh. Yep.
alumni recently.
Mhm.
Well, okay, that alumni was my son. But I was talking about the Entrepreneurship Institute, and I traded groups actually last year. I moved from environmental stewardship to entrepreneurship, and I was talking to my son about this. We are so lucky and fortunate that we get to do this. That's what he was telling me. Like, you're in a private school, we have flexibility, we can adapt, and we can bring in these skills when, other schools may not be able to do that. We can set aside time. And so during the entrepreneurship meetings with the kids, I'd say, listen, we're all here. We get to do this. We get to spend this time together. We get to be excited about this. So I was really excited by watching the kids in action, looking to my colleagues and saying, like, holy mackerel, this is actually working. They're doing this, right? We're seeing these skills come out of them that we didn't know that they could do, right? And then, the feedback from the kids was, that they loved it, and just what an opportunity. So those words rang true, I think, for the 2 Saturdays for me, was we get to do this and we did it well.
I think too, we get a lot of really good ideas that come out of these institutes for us as classroom teachers. Jay mentioned the rejuvenation. That's huge as well. I mean, we're Amy, with respectfully, we leaders are all boys. It doesn't leave us no matter how old we get. So yeah, we like to be outside. We like to be doing, and we can relate to the experiential need for experiential learning. So it's something that I think it's exciting, because you can see the excitement that the boys have and how they focus in deeply on certain things, and then how there's a joyful moment. We got the flag, and that kind of thing. And so the strategy worked, and people are patting each other on the back, high five and that kind of thing. But it's wonderful to see this thing actually take shape, as Mike was saying. It really is. And I think personally, I just really love the ideas that I get as a classroom teacher from the boys, not just for the institute purposes, that too, but for classroom, a lot of things that have, given me different directions to pursue and think about in my lessons, so that I'm getting back to what they want to learn. So thanks.
I would add that as we, at Trinity-Pawling, we're dorm parents, we're coaches, we're teachers, we're advisors. We get to know lots, kids, lots of different sides of each kid that we work with, which is a real benefit for us and for the boys. But, I would add that on Saturdays in the institutes, we get to work with kids we might not otherwise have the opportunity to, and we get to see them in a different light that's not an academic setting. And we get to see skill sets come out that they have that may not shine in the classroom as much. So as we get to, see yet another side of who they are and what they're good at. And so I really enjoy that part of this. And I would also, with a nod to what Jay said, provide a very specific example of the learning that we get to do as leaders. That's exciting. We had a senior last year who I taught in Spanish for at least 3 years, knew him really well. And we asked the seniors, hey, what should we offer this spring? And he came up with something called air pruning. And I said, great, I have no idea what that is. And so I got to learn about it. It's propagating plants, shrubs and trees by putting peat moss around their branch and having it grow roots and then cutting it off and starting a new plant. So we said, great, we could teach the boys to do that. He led his peers in a class on air pruning, and we hope to use it on some of the apple trees, the decades old apple trees we have on campus, and keep them going and propagate them. But that's something I had no idea even existed. And that was something he was passionate about, and I mean, who knew? And so that came out, and he was able to teach the class and lead a group. So that was fantastic. So I mean, these are all topics that are really in the Environmental Institute that matter to me, but we're learning each time. So it also, I guess, not only on the students, but are the faculty, the 12 or so that we have with us, also have skills and experiences, life experience, that may not come to light in the classroom or in regular conversation, and all of a sudden they're leading a group on something they're passionate about, and we all benefit from that. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to hear about the apple trees too, because those we did research on recently and found out they were here when the school arrived here on this piece of land, which was a farm. There was an apple orchard, and I'm looking toward where they are. So that's great. I hope they can continue. Okay, for our final question before we get to questions from the outside, Bill, what is our future? What is the future of the institutes, and how might they evolve over the time, if you have a crystal ball?
Well, sure. I mean, I think the institutes, right now they're existing in this co-curricular realm. But always the vision is for them to evolve, and I'm so delighted to hear the comments from my colleagues who are saying how they're already taking aspects from the co-curricular experience, and it's influencing some of the classroom content. The next step of this is to have more courses be driven by these institute themes. I know that I've this year, for the first year in 25 years, I'm not teaching a course that I developed 25 years ago. And one of the term classes I'm teaching is on leadership, and it's leadership through history. I taught a course, finishing up a course now on the American Revolution that has a lot to do with citizenship and how it sort of developed, and we'll be teaching a course on the civil rights movement, which is also sort of citizenship, leadership, and so forth. But I think we'll be moving more into creating very course content that still is going to hit the need to be preparing students academically for college, but will do so in a way that will become increasingly more relevant, because they will begin to experience this learning in multimodal fashions, things that are happening in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom.
Wonderful. Okay, I think at this juncture, we'll go to our questions. We had a couple that were submitted prior to the webinar, and I think we've done a pretty good job of answering, but what kind of clubs and classes focus on leadership and entrepreneurship? We've alluded to a lot of the intermingling, but are there any that stand out in terms of leadership and entrepreneurship? Would either of you?
Leadership.
I was thinking of two that are, well, actually, just recently, a student came up to me and asked if he could design an entrepreneurship club with me being the leader. So hopefully that will take foot. But we also have a well-known and well-attended finance group that's led by one of our seniors. In fact, this senior is quite the entrepreneur already. And I think, as my understanding of it is, he is actually teaching. He's teaching about students about investment, and I think he's running it like a course. And I think there's a couple of kids that actually dropped that course because it was too much work. And it was a club, so I think as the students are, I hope as the students are introduced to entrepreneurship. In all of these institutes, but entrepreneurship I'll speak to, I hope that more clubs will spring up during this year as they learn more about what it can offer.
If I'm not mistaken, our clubs, we do allow students to recommend or start clubs, their own initiative. In and of itself, that's leadership. That's they have to take the initiative to bring the idea forward, sell it to the adults, and get it going. Certainly our athletic programs, on a number of levels, hit many of the facets of leadership development, whether you're actually a team captain or, a younger underclassman learning to play a position, and you're getting some help from the older guy that's in front of you. And you're learning from watching coaches and senior players who are off to college experiences later on in their lives. So I think there's a lot of leadership built into what we do outside the classroom as well as in.
Great, thank you. And I also believe the question is the program based on participation outside of school. We answered by yes, it's outside of the classroom, but not outside of school. It's built into our schedule now on the Saturday programming. So that is a question. And then
and it's also on our transcripts. So it's
yes.
everybody's graded on it. The underclassmen have a pass fail, but the seniors get an actual grade for how they're how they perform and how they execute their responsibilities. And we describe it in the college process, and the feedback that we've gotten from the colleges has been very, very positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. The final question that I have from a parent, if it's okay, I'll read it, is not really a question, but I will read it because it's wonderful. It says, as a parent, I'm so thrilled that you do this and know my son absolutely loves Saturday programming. He's always telling us what he learns. These skills are critical and so lacking with our youth today. I think you're bang on in helping the boys explore and develop in these areas. Great job. Well done. Thanks to all for your time in making these great. So we appreciate your comment. Thank you very much. And if in the interest of time, it is just about 8 o'clock. We'd like to be respectful of everyone's time. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. Thanks to our 4 institute leaders. Thanks to you, Mr. Taylor, for leading us through this. And I'd also like to remind everyone that we do these regularly. We are going to take a little bit of a break. We have a couple of weeks. Our next webinar will be November 29th, and we will be concentrating on our Center for Learning Achievement, which is a special program that we have here at Trinity-Pawling. It's not new. It's actually morphed over the decades. It's something that was founded back in the 70s, but you'll have to tune in on November 29th to find out more about that Center for Learning Achievement. And we'd like to again thank, oh, there's the bell. It's time for study hall. We'd like to thank you very much for coming tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Bye now.